Welcome back, everyone. I went ahead and bought the iPhone 12, so we're going to go ahead and do a comparison between the iPhone 12 Pro, which is this one, and between the iPhone 11. Now, you can actually pick up both these brand new from the Apple Store right now, which is very interesting. The iPhone 12 Pro is costing $999 for the base model, which is 128 gigs. The iPhone 11 is costing $599, so a little bit of difference in price, about $500 or $400, whatever. And obviously I have the iPhone 11 to the right, iPhone 12 Pro to the left, and I'll go ahead and find the cheapest ones on Amazon. I'll link them down in the description below. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now, looking side by side, you can automatically see that the iPhone 12 Pro, even though they have the same size screen, are actually quite a bit different when it comes down to how they feel in the hand. The iPhone 12 Pro, as everyone knows, has those flat sides, which is a huge asset for it. The iPhone 11 has those curved sides, but what I can tell you is when you're feeling them both in the hand, the iPhone 11 feels a little bit thinner, even though it's not. The iPhone 12 Pro is technically thinner, but it doesn't feel like it because, it has, the flat sides versus the curved kind of indented sides on the iPhone 11. Now, looking at the front panels of both, the iPhone 11 has that 6.1-inch liquid retina IPS panel. It's 828 by 1792, that's that resolution, and I found throughout my life that it was a pretty good panel, even continuing on from the 10R. It was a good panel. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't OLED. It didn't have the bells and whistles as something like an 11 Pro, but it was still a really good panel at that time. I had pretty much nothing to complain about, and the fact that this phone was $699 and now it's $599 makes it that much better of a deal in my opinion in a lot of different ways. And even though these are the same panels, this panel still has a lot going for it too. Even though it's not OLED, I still think the iPhone 11's panel is really good. Where the iPhone 12 Pro, on the other hand, as expected, has that 6.1-inch OLED Super Retina XDR OLED panel. It's 1170 by 2532, so definitely a better display on the iPhone 12 Pro. Now, do you notice it? I'll be honest, in some cases, yeah, in some cases, no. Like, for sure, like when it comes down to the viewing angles, I've been kind of seeing that the iPhone 12 series has kind of, I don't know if it's a less brighter display or whatever, I can't tell. It just kind of seems like it's a little bit different than the iPhone 11 series. Maybe because it's the new OLED display or whatever, I don't know. But for sure, when it comes down to it, I guess the iPhone 12 Pro's panel is better. But I still think the iPhone 11's panel, for the most part, is really good as well. Now, as I said, side by side, you can see that there's some bezel around the display on the iPhone 11. And even though there's a same amount of bezel between them, it looks like the bezel is smaller on the iPhone 12 Pro because of the flat sides. On the iPhone 11, it kind of curved to the side, so definitely keep that in mind. Now, in terms of thickness, like I stated before, the iPhone 11 Pro is supposed to be thinner, and I guess it is to the thickest point of the iPhone 11, but when you're feeling them both in the hand, I just kind of get the sense that the iPhone 11 is just, noticeably thinner, I guess. I don't know what it is. I think it's the curved sides, but you can tell when I put them on top of each other, there's quite a bit of, gap between the iPhone 11 to where that ends to where the iPhone 12 Pro ends, if that kind of makes sense. So as you can see, they're same size panels, but there's noticeably less, phone in your hand on the iPhone 12 Pro than on the iPhone 11. And on the back, you can see triple camera setup with a LiDAR sensor on the iPhone 12 Pro, dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, and dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, frosted glass back on the iPhone 12 Pro, that's standard glass back on the iPhone 11. And definitely when it comes down to the outside, I'll definitely give the edge to the iPhone 12 Pro. It's a better phone because it's the newer one. It has a lot more bells and whistles. I like the back more on the iPhone 12 Pro, and the better camera setup is definitely a huge asset for it. But I still think the iPhone 11 feels really good. There's nothing wrong with it. The biggest asset I think for the 12 Pro, especially on the outside, is the flat design, the OLED panel. The IP certification got a pretty big upgrade as well, so you can now go 6 meters of water for 30 minutes over the iPhone 11's 2 meters of water for 30 minutes. And also you have the MagSafe capability on the back of this panel, which is really cool. So the MagSafe will just click on the iPhone 11, still charges but at a slower rate. So in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it up. Software wise, this is a really easy thing. They're both running iOS. The iPhone 12 Pro theoretically should last longer than the iPhone 11 by a year. They could run around and end at the same time, who knows, but I'll definitely tell you, one is not going to substantially outlast the other, I would think. But whether you get the 12 Pro now or the iPhone 11, they're both going to be lasting around the same time. So in terms of software, that was super easy. Now, hitting on the performance, and I'll go ahead and do a speed test between them. The iPhone 12 Pro has that Apple A13 Bionic chip, hex-core CPU with 4 gigabytes on each model. With the iPhone 11, and I totally messed this up, the iPhone 11 had those specs. The iPhone 12 Pro has that Apple A14 Bionic chip, hex-core CPU, and 6 gigabytes of RAM on each model. So technically like 50% more on this phone in terms of RAM than the iPhone 11. So let's go and see which one is the faster one between both of these. Okay, now that we're back, I have 69% battery on here. That's very important to note. Let me go ahead and swipe out of all these apps that I've tested previously, and you can see we are done on the iPhone 12 Pro. I really wish there was a way to cancel out all the RAM on here or just the apps, but it is what it is. Let's go and load up the phone calls. 3, 2, 1. Okay, about the same on both. Safari, let's go and load up something like bing.com. 3, 2, 1. Okay, iPhone 12 Pro I think was faster. This may have been a network thing too. I don't know why the iPhone 11 took that long. Animations wise, they look about the same too. Let's go ahead and do the app stores. 3, 2, 1. And you can see that the iPhone 12 Pro was definitely faster, I think. iPhone 11 taking its time. I don't know why. Yesterday this thing was being pretty fast. And right now that's not necessarily the case. Scrolling through though, you can see that they're probably going to be around the same, I would imagine. And that's definitely being the case. But the 12 Pro, I guess, is a little bit faster. Now, as always, I have a bunch of these third-party apps we can go and get into. Let's go and do Facebook. 3, 2, 1. 12 Pro faster. iPhone 11, we were logged into it though. Twitter. 3, 2, 1. And I think maybe the iPhone 11 may have been a little bit faster there. As stated before, I mean, they're going to be around the same though. Instagram, 3, 2, 1. I may be logged into here, so keep that in mind, and I was. The iPhone 12 Pro was still probably going to be fast. Paper.io 2, 3, 2, 1. And they both were almost identical. They were almost exactly the same. If you slow down the frames, maybe you'd be able to see one that was way faster or slower, but they both were pretty much the same. Gameplay-wise, they look about the same to me too. I don't think one is way smoother or anything, which I guess is a good thing, or a bad thing depending on how you look at it. We can do stack. 3, 2, 1. Now I usually just wait until whichever one gets into the ad first, and the iPhone 12 Pro was the faster one to get into the ad. The iPhone 11 was a little bit behind it. Snake versus blocks. 3, 2, 1. And iPhone 12 Pro was slightly ahead of it, so this one was, it's not a crazy big game, but it did stutter up a little bit in the beginning with which I don't really know why. We can do Fruit Ninja. 3, 2, 1. And they were almost identical, to be completely honest. I mean, you guys saw they were both almost hand in hand. Quizlet. 3, 2, 1. Okay, about the same there too. Temple Run 2. 3, 2, 1. And I'm kind of seeing a weird trend. Is the 12 Pro like kind of a little bit slower sometimes than the iPhone 11? I don't know, the speed's super close. I mean, Apple stated the A14 chip inside this one was super fast, and I mean, the A13 chip is still super relevant, and the 12 Pro was slightly faster there. But so far, I haven't been seeing, crazy improvements in performance. I think, but yesterday I did a couple more comparisons, and it was way more noticeable than this one. So I don't know what's really going on here. And we can go and end it off with the Real Racing 3, 3, 2, 1. I think I kind of have a decent opinion on these two things already. And I'm not going to say the iPhone 12 Pro is slower, because I don't think it's slower. But there are some cases where the iPhone 11 was faster than a phone like the 12 Pro, which is very, very weird. And in this case too, the iPhone 11 was faster than the iPhone 12 Pro, which I don't really understand. I've been playing with the iPhone 12 Pro recently. I've been making videos on it and stuff like that. This isn't the first comparison. I've already loaded all these apps onto both these phones already. And that's a very weird thing. I don't really get this one. I feel like the iPhone 12 was actually faster than the iPhone 12 Pro when it came down to comparing it to the iPhone 11. So that's a very weird thing. Now, RAM management should theoretically be better on the iPhone 12 Pro. Now, I didn't load up a bunch of crazy apps in the background. There were a couple of big ones, and so far they're doing pretty good, but I'm actually kind of surprised about the iPhone 12 Pro. Like, it seemed kind of slow. I was expecting more from it, maybe. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I was expecting too much. But that's actually very weird. I don't understand it. So when it comes down to this performance and specifically the speed comparison, I mean, I don't know, maybe like the iPhone 12 Pro is a little bit slower sometimes, or maybe it's like up to par, or pretty much the same thing as the iPhone 11, but I was expecting more of a difference in my opinion. So I guess when it comes down to that, that pretty much covers up the speed comparison. Let's go ahead and hit on the cameras, and I'll do a full speed comparison at some point, but let's hit on the cameras. Now, as I stated previously, we have a triple camera setup on the iPhone 12 Pro with a LiDAR sensor and a dual camera setup on the iPhone 11, all 12 megapixel sensors on both phones. The only difference is we have an additional telephoto lens on the iPhone 11 Pro, on the iPhone 12 Pro. With the iPhone 11, we only have that 12 megapixel wide and 12 megapixel ultra wide. So we have the ultra wide and the telephoto and the LiDAR sensor on the iPhone 12 Pro. Now, in terms of the user interfaces on both, I'm pretty sure they're going to be exactly the same. And, so far, actually, I don't know why. Maybe is the iPhone 11 camera looking a little bit better to me than the iPhone 12 Pro? Maybe it's just, from the blurriness or something like that. But they're both going to have pretty much the same features, 4K at 60 on both of them, and I'll probably tell you the iPhone 11 camera may not be as good as the iPhone 12 Pro, mostly because it doesn't have the LiDAR sensor and the telephoto lens that the iPhone 12 Pro has. Now, the iPhone 11's camera from day one has been extremely good. I had very little to complain about. I think, if you're somebody who just doesn't really care about the quality of the photos, you want the best quality with the least amount of resistance, the iPhone 11 is a perfect phone. You have a great back camera and you have a great front camera. You have 12 megapixel sensor. They're both almost the same on both. 4K at 60 on this camera. Very, very good. Like I said, very little to complain about. It's not like you're going to pick up this phone and feel like you have an outdated phone already. That is definitely not the case, especially compared to the iPhone 12. But even compared to the 12 Pro, you're going to have a pretty good setup for, the iPhone 11. And I think for people who are making Snapchats and TikToks, iPhone 11 is perfectly fine. But the 12 Pro, I guess, is the better phone because it has to be better. With that A14 chip, it probably brought some improvements, but I still think for a majority of people out there, if you have an iPhone 11, it's still good enough. But this camera should be better. It has better camera setups, it has better lenses, it has more lenses than this one. So that's another big thing to note. You're still tapped out of 4K at 60 on both cameras. You have 4K at 60 on the front camera too. Whenever we see that 8K jump up, I think that's when it's going to be pretty big. But I'll definitely tell you the 12 Pro has the better camera, but the iPhone 11's camera is really pretty good too. And I still think it's like 90% of what the iPhone 12 Pro's camera is. So in terms of camera, that pretty much covers it up. Now ending it off with the battery life, the iPhone 11 had a 3,110 mAh battery. The iPhone 12 Pro has a 2,815 mAh battery. Now in my opinion, and I have tested it a little bit on standby time last night, the iPhone 11, I think, has the better battery life for sure. It has a lower resolution display. It doesn't have an OLED display, and it has a bigger battery. I think the iPhone 12 Pro, this is where it probably falls flat on its face the most, and it's probably the strangest movement that Apple did. I don't know why they did it, but I will do a full battery comparison at some point. Maybe I'll drop it on my second channel or this channel, but I'll definitely tell you the iPhone 12 Pro's battery life is probably good, but the iPhone 11's battery life will be better. So to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you pick up the iPhone 11 or the 12 Pro? Should you upgrade from one of these to the other? I'll tell you some pros and cons for the iPhone 11 first. I think this phone is a tremendous phone still. For the price that you're paying for, I think it's great. For $599 or $699 or even cheaper than that on Amazon or in the used market, this phone is a killer phone. It has a pretty decent display. It's okay. Great build quality, really, really good cameras still. Great battery life, great performance. You guys saw that. And there's just not that much to hate on it. It's a very stable phone, IP certification. Software is going to be lasting for a very long time on this phone. And I said this before and I'll say it again. There's just not that much to complain about. It's a very safe phone. And the iPhone 12 Pro is pretty much the exact same thing, just a little bit better, but with worse battery life. So you're getting a longer lasting phone. You're getting a better screen on this phone for sure. I guess a better build quality if you like the flat sides. I kind of like it, but maybe people don't care about it. You're going to put a case on it anyway. Theoretically, better performance. Maybe it'll get better over time. I don't know. But that is another big thing to keep in mind. Better cameras on the iPhone 12 Pro than on the iPhone 11. But you're also missing some things. Like I feel like the battery life should have been a good upgrade from the iPhone 11 to the 12 Pro. And that is not the case. You're losing a little bit of battery life when you're doing that. Also, it's way more expensive, $400 more expensive than the iPhone 11. So that's another pretty big thing to keep in mind. Now, I don't think you should go from an iPhone 11 to the 12 Pro or vice versa. I don't know who would go vice versa. But I'll definitely tell you, if you wanted the best bang for your buck between both of these, I think getting the iPhone 11 may be a better choice for a lot of people. I still think the iPhone 12 Pro, if you have all the money in the world, then pick up this phone, pick up a charging brick too, or whatever. But I think the iPhone 11 is a tremendous phone still. And I'm actually more happy with the iPhone 11, how well it did in this comparison than over the 12 Pro in my opinion. So in terms of everything, that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.